The Meeples and Miniatures podcast is sponsored by Two Fat Lardies, Code Darms Paints, and Miniature Wargames with Battle Games magazine, and also by the generous donations of you, the listener. Thanks to everybody for their continued support. The Meeples and Miniatures podcast, episode 129. All quiet on the Martian Front, with hosts Neil Shuck and Mike Hobbs. This show was recorded on the 26th of June, 2014. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Meeples and Miniatures podcast with me, Neil Shuck, and tonight I'm joined by Mike Hobbs. Hi Mike.
Hello again.
Hello. Well, this evening we're going to have, I think it's only our third attempt. It may even be our fourth, but I think it's only our third attempt. We first attempted to record this, as we looked into it today, it seems over a year ago. Right, we first talked about it. Well, we first recorded a show on this game on the 5th of June 2013. At which point it was only a Kickstarter. However, a year on, it's now actually appeared in the flesh. A box arrived on the doorstep of Mr. Hobbs. When was that? Last Friday, Mike?
Last Friday evening, yes, about 5 o'clock. I was thinking it ain't gonna arrive, and then suddenly it arrived.
It arrived, and by the end of the weekend, he'd assembled and painted models.
Yeah.
Which means that he's not long for this show. Because at the point where you completely put the host to shame, especially after the disparaging comments he made about my painting on the last show. Days are numbered, mate.
That's the way it goes. So for new listeners, Neil doesn't really paint much.
I have. I think the phrase is bags of enthusiasm, painting time next to zero.
Yes.
And I'm constantly saying it's going to change next month. I'm going to paint something next month. I'm going to paint something next week.
Yes.
It hasn't happened yet. I fully intend to try and get something painted by the end of the summer. But as Mike is. We'll tell you, believe that when you see it, guys. However, best endeavours and all that. But in the meantime, Mike's making up for it by painting all sorts of bits and pieces. What is this thing we're talking about?
This thing is the world famous All Quiet on the Martian Front, which, as you said, was a Kickstarter last May. I was ridiculed by you and Rich Jones on a podcast, which never got released about the game, but it's finally here. So,
yes, I think one of the reasons why that particular show never got released was because, it did kind of descend a little bit into. Let's not just go there. Let's just say we weren't particularly positive at the time. And then myself and Mike then got together and they released like alpha rules or what have you, hadn't they, or something? And
yeah, that's right. A little supplement with a small scenario in it and some basic rules.
Yeah, and we got a hold of that and we thought, okay, we'll have a look through that and we'll talk about it and release a show about it. And then we recorded it and went, that's just rubbish.
Yeah, it wasn't very good. Plus the fact that by that time we actually got it ready to release, the Kickstarter finished, so we thought there's not much point, just wait until it comes out.
Indeed, and that was a year ago, so it's taken ages.
Yeah, but it's a whole new game from scratch. These things take time. So it's been a very good Kickstarter. I mean, the guys at Alien Dungeon were really good. They kept people informed. A few problems with obviously getting the stuff sent out to people. They literally had 1,000 pre-orders to send out in a very short period of time across the world. So, there's been a few mumbles and grumbles about stuff not arriving quickly, but I'm fairly pragmatic, so mine arrived, I got it, so I'm very happy. But I have wave 1, but we can go into what I've got later.
Hang on. So wave 1 of that's of how many waves, Mike?
2 or 3, I imagine. To be honest with you, I think we've got the basic stuff. We've got enough to get going.
Is it fair to say you made a sizable investment in this game?
Fairly sizable. Should we just leave it at that because my wife's in the other room?
That's fair enough. Right, okay. So Mike did invest in, as I say, things are coming in several waves. If you've been on the gaming press, such as Tabletop Gaming News or the Miniatures page over recent weeks, you'll have started seeing press announcements about stuff going up for pre-order and stuff basically just about to come into stock. So by now, hopefully, you'll have seen some of the models and what have you. Mm-hmm. I will put on the Meeples and Miniatures app, people, that you can purchase from iTunes and also from the Amazon App Store. I'll put some pictures on the app for you of a couple of Mike's painted stuff and what have you, so you can see what we're talking about. Obviously, I've not got this. Mike's got this. We went through the Kickstarter together. We had a dabble with the original rules. I don't know how much has changed since, so it's going to be interesting to go through and discuss that. But at this point, we're going to say review All Quiet on the Martian Front. Mike's got wave 1, including all the rulebook and everything else. So, Mike, over to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so All Quiet on the Martian Front. So it's a 15mm-ish, shall we say, game, company level.
Yeah.
It's set in a fictional universe. The Martians have landed again, so don't think this game is a direct copy of War of the Worlds. It's not. They've taken the theme of War of the Worlds and they basically just run with it in this alternative universe.
Oh, right, so it's not even historically they've come back just before. It's 10 years later. It's things have moved on in a completely different direction.
Yeah, sort of. I think it's fair to say they've done like a sort of parallel universe, shall we say. So, 1898, Martians invaded. They all caught colds and died, and they landed in London. That's what we know.
Mm-hmm.
And the premise of the game really is that 8 years later, in 1908 or so, they landed again. But this time, instead of landing in the middle of the most crowded metropolitan city in Europe, they landed in places like the middle of the Atacama Desert and in Mongolia and in Australia and the middle of the south of the Nevada Desert, where people didn't really, they weren't spotted. It was very quiet, low-key, and then they built up and then suddenly, boom, they start this massive invasion. And the invasion goes on for a couple of years or so. Basically, both sides find themselves fighting to a standstill. The Martians don't take any more land, and everyone starts to regroup. And this is why it's called All Quiet on the Martian Front, because it's this lull in fighting. The rule book that we've got now covers the North American campaign.
Right.
So the backstory, there's a lot of fluff and stuff in the rule book. But the basic premise is that by this stage, when the game's taking place, nobody really knows what's going on in Australia because they can't get through. Apparently it's been overrun. Not really sure what's going on in South America for the same reason. There's battle lines across Russia where they're moving in from the steppes. Big battles going on in China. The Japanese have gone over and helped the Chinese. Japan is untouched. Most of Europe is untouched. India is fairly untouched. And Africa is pretty much split in two.
Mm.
And America, the mid range of America is basically taken over by Martians. So you've got these outposts of humans on the coast, and basically they're saying that the Martians don't seem to want to go, too close to the coast. They don't want to go too close to large populated areas. So they're trying to take as much land as possible, ready for the next land grab. So that's where you are. So this is focusing on America. So America is basically, been massively overrun, but is starting to fight back.
Mm-hmm.
And the British, who obviously managed to keep some Martian technology after the last invasion, and then built up an army in readiness for another invasion, much to the dismay of Germany and France, basically come over to America and start helping them out. So that's where we are. So, it's a classic Martians versus humans game set in 1908, 1910 or something like that.
Right. Okay, so you said it's kind of based at company level.
Yeah.
So what sort of table size are we looking at, and what sort of figure count?
You're looking at about 6x4 on standard. You can go bigger. Figure count, it depends on the armies. I mean, Martian armies are a lot smaller because they're based around these tripods with some ground troops.
Mm-hmm.
The human troop of armies are a lot bigger. So you're looking, probably about a dozen tanks and 50 plus infantry.
Right.
The only way I could describe it is probably if you think of a Flames of War army, it's that sort of scale. But to be honest with you, I haven't really looked at the army list that in that much detail to work out armies yet. I'm just having fun painting up tripods.
Yeah, I mean, is it fair to say that the starter box and the stuff that you get in Wave 1 does allow you to build a full human army, or is it just not enough? Is it just not quite enough points?
Oh no, I've got loads. I went for the I think it's the All Out Assault pledge, which would cost
Yeah.
and that gave me. Actually, in the parcel that I received, I had 4 of the assault tripods, which are the mainstay of the Martian army, 7 of the scout tripods, which are sort of small variant, a couple of grenadier ones. I also had the human prey, which are basically a bunch of civilians running in all directions, which are really nice sculpts. These things called lobotothons or lobotophons, which are like zombie troops. So they're human beings which have been captured by the Martians and basically impregnated, given weird helmets and weapons, and they basically get driven in front of the Martians, which is more than enough to do a fair sized battle. That'll probably do me quite a sizable battle, just that lot. On the human side, I've got 18 tank sprues. The tank sprues allow you to do a Mark II or a Mark III tank, which is the mainstay of the American forces. I've got 90 infantry. I've got machine guns. I've got Rough Riders, which are troops on Harley Davidsons who basically try and lasso Martians. If you think of The Empire Strikes Back, it's and imagine that a tripod is an AT-AT. Well, the Rough Riders basically do that. They try and sweep around, tie the legs up, and make them fall over.
Right. Okay.
So I got those. I got some heavy infantry. I got a bunch of resin trenches. It's like a full trench system. I've got some British troops as well. I could go on. I think there's probably something else in it.
I was going to say, oh right, you went for it then.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's at the point where you're going to go, oh yeah, I got the resin trench system. I thought, okay.
well, that was actually part of the Kickstarter. At the level I was going in on, I mean, I think I bought one piece of trench system, which is like a command bunker. Or I might have had that free as well. But yeah, it's sort of five bits of trenches, which is quite nice. So I got all that. I also had the main rule book, the hardback rule book. I had the rules handbook, which is a smaller version. It's a little A5 rule book. All the counters, dice, a ton of posters, loads and loads of A3 posters I got.
Oh, right, okay.
Which are quite nice. But unfortunately, I'm not a 12-year-old boy, so they won't be going up on my study because my wife won't let me put them up. I might frame one of them because they're quite nice. And blip counters and all sorts of stuff. So, it was a big box, and there is enough in there to get going. Obviously, I've got to paint the stuff. But hey. But, the rulebook, the main rulebook, is really nice. It's 176 pages. It's full colour. It's hardback. Loads of content. It's very shiny. It's even got an index. It's got a proper index at the back.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's an immediate positive.
Yeah, it's really good. So that's what I got. And that will be enough to do a lot of games. The next wave of stuff I got going will have some more specialised tanks in it. Some more tripods, some sort of specialised tripods. All of the drones are coming. There's another pile of stuff coming, as well as a very large Dominator tripod, which I think is about a foot tall.
Oh wow! Okay.
You've got to have something like that, haven't you? So that's what I've got.
Other than the figures and stuff, obviously you've got a load of stuff. So other than the figures, what sort of stuff do you need to play the game? As far as other accessories.
Oh, usual stuff. Markers, which I got. I got little plastic markers, which are quite nice. But I think they've done a PDF with the markers on them. So these are things like blip markers and showing if things are routed and damage markers.
Yeah.
It's D10. It's a proper D10 game.
Oh, it's D10 based as opposed to D6 based then.
Yeah. And some tape measures.
It's interesting because the rules are written by. Have you mentioned the rules written by Rick Priestley?
No. So the rules written by Rick, Alessio Cavatore, Ernie Baker, and Jeff Hall. Now I don't know how much input. I think Alessio did quite a lot of the rules writing, and I think Rick was involved on writing some of the history or the background with Ernie.
Right.
But I'm not sure on that. But it's a nicely put together game.
Yeah, as I say, it's interesting the fact that, especially when you start looking at things like Beyond the Gates of Antares, for example, which was around last year, what have you. It certainly seems that from Rick's point of view, all of a sudden, D6 are out the window and D10 are in, and you are starting to see several games now that are using D10s rather than D6s. It's just interesting to see how all of a sudden things seem to be changing just slightly. I've just read another set of rules which again all of a sudden it's starting using D10s, not D6s.
Yeah, it comes down to the rules, I suppose, and the probability charts you can do a lot more with a D10 because it's obviously got 4 more numbers on it. D6, and I think in the past people kept away from D10s, D12s, D20s because there was a perception that people could only handle D10s. I think it was a case of, people who were probably brought up playing Monopoly and those games, which are always D6, probably, it was thought that they wouldn't like D10s or the other odd dices. But I think that's changed. And I think now rules writers are saying, what's the best randomizer for this set of rules? And, for this one, obviously they've chosen D10s.
Yeah.
I don't mind, I got millions of the bloody things.
The eagles have gone. Britain lies defenseless in a cruel world. Since the birth of our Lord, it has been 456 years. What sins have we committed to bring this punishment to Britain? I speak, of course, of the Saxons. They came as allies, but now they seek conquest. The lands of the Britons lie ravaged before them. Blood runs red in our island. We need a leader to stand against them. We need a man to bring together the Britons in common cause. We seek a Dux Britanniarum.
Right, that's enough of that. Dux Britanniarum from Two Fat Lardies. They really are very good.
So once you've got your tape measure, you've got your D10s, you've sorted out all your counters. Okay, so let's have a look at the rules. Take us through the rules, Mike.
Okay, so this is what I call a classic you go, I go, or I go, you go rules. Your army is based around units. Units will consist of usually 3 elements of the same type. So it's a unit-based game. So you'd have 3 tanks of the same type, which would consist of 1 unit. You'd have, say, 6 stands of infantry, which would consist of 2 units of infantry. You know, yeah. So it's that. So everything is done at the unit level, and each unit has, you know, the standard stats that you'd expect. You know, it tells you what type it is, what its speed is, a defense value, an armor value, which I think is slightly misleading because to me they both sound the same.
Yeah.
Any special rules, and then any weapons that are carried by that unit. You set up it's scenario based, so each scenario tells you how to set up the table. We'll come back to scenarios later, but you know, You set up the scenarios, and then you basically it's a point system. So each player will work out their army from the point system, but there is no composition rules for an army. So so players have complete free reign to put into their army anything that they want from the army list. That being said, they have put in some orders of battle, sort of battalion breakdown, so which tells you, for a infantry battalion, this is how platoons are put together in that battalion. So you can use that, but it's not enforced. We'll come back. We'll come back to that in a bit. But people put together their armies, and away they go. The way the rules work. So you deploy, you set up as per the scenario, and then you have the turn sequence. Each scenario will have a certain number of turns that take place. So you have an initiative phase. In the initiative phase, each player rolls a d10. The human player will have some modifiers. This game is based really around having Martians versus a human force as standard. Although you can play Martians on Martians if you wanted to, or humans on humans. But essentially, when you roll initiative, the humans do get some modifiers depending on the number of enemy units that they've killed of a certain value, or the number of units they got routing and so forth.
Okay.
The Martians don't get any modifiers at all. It's a straight dice roll. So whoever gets the highest roll gets to go first. And the first player, in his phase, there's a movement phase, so everything moves. Then you have a combat phase, where everything can shoot or take part in a close assault.
Yeah.
And then there's a second movement phase afterwards.
Oh, right, okay.
Which is an interesting little idea, and I kind of quite like it. Once player 1 has done all that, player 2 does the same: move, combat, move again, and then there's an end phase.
Right.
So movement. Every unit has a movement value. That's in inches. Terrain affects the movement. As you move into terrain, that affects the amount of movement that you take, and it slows you down and so forth. But you measure from the center of each element, or from the center of the model if it's unbased.
Oh, right, okay. Center.
Yeah.
Not front edge, okay.
Sorry, yeah, the front center.
Well, oh, okay. Well,
yeah,
that's what you mean.
So you basically take a point from the front center of the element, and then you move that forward the amount of inches it's allowed to move, and then you can pivot that unit in any direction that you want. So it's quite a free-flowing movement. Obviously, elements in a unit have to stay within a certain coherency, and I think that's about 1 inch or 2.
Yeah.
And you've got to try and keep away from, at least 1 inch away from any other unit, unless you're moving into combat.
Right.
Some units can make a double move in the first move phase, but if they do that, they then can't move in the second move phase. Or, sorry, they can move in the second move phase, but they can't ever make a combined move that is twice their normal movement. If that makes sense.
At this point, you kind of start thinking, okay, so why would you do that? But okay, yeah.
But the reason is, say a tank has got a movement of 8 inches. So in movement phase 1, it can move up to 8 inches. It can then shoot or do some close combat, and then in phase 2, it can then move another 8 inches. So it might move back behind the hill. It's just moved
Yes.
somewhat. So there's some move. Or if it's got the ability, it can move, say, 10 inches in the first turn. So it's got a double move, so it can move up to 16, but it decides it's only going to move 10. It can then fire or something, but then it's only got a 6-inch move to retire with.
Okay.
So you've got by using the double move in the first turn, you can move a lot faster, a lot closer to the enemy, but it will leave you vulnerable if you want to retire back or move into another bit of cover.
Right, I see. Yeah. So I mean, especially I suppose when it comes, as you say, closing in, reducing range bands and that sort of thing.
There's no range bands. But
There's no range bands.
No.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah. So that's but double moves, they don't happen all the time. You have to have special abilities. It comes under the command and control, and some units can do it. It's sort of like an assault move, I suppose you could describe it. You can only move into assault in move phase 1. So in your first move, you either get into close combat or you don't. You can't move into close combat in your second move. Your second move is really a consolidation move.
Right.
So it basically gets you out of trouble again, which kind of fits with the whole ethos of the game, I think, which is, it really is trying to sort of move, fire, and then get back into cover. There's lots of that going on because, especially for the humans are really, really vulnerable if they're out in the open because they will just get blatted. So for the humans, they've got to stay in cover and they've got to basically hide. So that's the movement. Combat, it's very simple. If we cover shooting first of all, where you do shooting is you've done your first movement phase, you're now in the combat phase. So the first thing you do is you pick a unit to shoot with, and that unit then picks an enemy to fire at. The unit you're firing at, you have to be able to draw a line of sight from one or more of your units, so one or more of your elements, to an enemy element.
Right.
Only the friendly units that have line of sight can fire.
Okay.
But as long as you can draw a line of sight to one enemy, the hits that are taken can be spread across the enemy unit.
Right. So even if you physically can't see something, because if you can't see elements 2 and 3, but you can see element 1, even if you fire at element 1, you could still potentially damage elements 2 and 3.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
It's an abstraction.
Right.
Yeah. Pick a unit to shoot at, pick an enemy to fire at, check line of sight, check the range. There's no range bands. Each weapon has a certain range that it can fire. There might be some special rules for some types of weapons, but I haven't seen any. I think they've kept it fairly simple.
Right.
So for each weapon that's firing, you roll a d10, and you're looking to roll over the enemy defense value. And there's modifiers for that, for cover and so forth. For each one that equals or rolls over that value, that scores a hit.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, for each hit you score, you roll a d10, and then you're looking to roll over the enemy's armor value, again with some modifiers, depending on the weapons that you're using.
Right. So it's still roll to hit, roll to wound,
Pretty much, yeah.
armor save.
Yeah. Call it what you want.
Yeah.
Some weapons have what is called a power rating, which you add to your dice roll to roll over the armor level. So, for example, a assault tripod has an armor level of 11. Now, obviously, you've only got a d10.
Mm.
But if you've got a weapon with, say, a +2 power, you then will score a hit on a 9 or 10 instead of on 11, because you've got +2 on your dice.
Yeah.
Simple as that. So the more strength you've got in the weapon, the more chance of doing damage. Small elements will take one hit and they're taken off. Bigger elements like assault tripods or the bigger units have a damage chart.
Right.
When a unit, a large unit, takes a hit, it then rolls on its damage chart, and those can be anything from no effect up to kaboom. But the more hits that you've done against that unit increase the chance of getting a better score on the damage chart. It's a plus. So say you scored 3 hits against an enemy tripod, you get +2 on the damage roll, because the first one is just taken, that's the hit, and then any more above the first one give you a +1.
Yeah.
So you roll on the damage chart. The damage charts are pretty good. They basically cover things like I'll bring up now one for tripods. So for a score to 1 to 5, it's slightly damaged. The armor stat is reduced by 1.
Mm-hmm.
Up to 10 plus, the tripod is destroyed and exploded in a spectacular fashion. Any units within 6 inches of the destroyed tripod from either side are caught in the explosion, and then they take hits as well. So there's lots of that going on.
Okay.
So it sort of covers the difference between the lighter tanks, which pretty much get blitzed straight away, and the bigger tripods and the bigger units that can take a lot more damage.
Yeah.
So that's shooting. Assaults. Assaults use a similar method. So basically, in move phase 1, you move into assault. Only units with assault weapons can assault other units.
Okay.
You have to get into base contact. Every element that gets into base contact counts as being in the assault. Supporting units that can get to the base, can get to the rear base of the attacking unit can support that attack as well.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you can have 2 bases, one behind each other. The second base will support the first one.
Right.
Okay. Only the side that moves into combat attacks. The defender is passive.
Right. Okay.
And also, if you have multiple units attacking one enemy unit, you do the assault as one attack. You don't break it down by the units. It's all one attack. So, say you got 2 units of infantry moving in, and you get 3 bases in base contact with the enemy tripod. That's one attack.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So it would be like, for example, you'll declare 1 unit attacking, and because there are actually 3 in base-to-base contact, that will give you a modifier rather than having 3 combats.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. Got you.
So you basically, what you do is, once you've worked out the number of elements who are eligible to attack, you roll a d10 for each element as fighting, and the target is the enemy's defense value again. There's no modifiers really for that. You roll a d10 for each hit that's scored, and you're looking to roll over the enemy's armor value again with some modifiers, and again, single elements or small elements taken off if they take 1 hit. The larger ones again roll on the damage chart, and then you then check morale if hits are taken. So say 2 infantry units go into combat with each other, and the defender loses, say, 2 stands, and he has 1 stand left. That 1 stand that's left makes a morale roll. And that's a D10, you're looking for 5 or more. There's modifiers to that, but only humans make morale rolls. Martians don't do it, because Martians are unthinking creatures that have no fear and feel no pain.
Oh, right, okay. So does that also include the human troops that Martians have under their control?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Because they're basically they got big helmets on, which are basically controlling their minds and telling them what to do. They're essentially zombies,
Right.
but with much prettier hats. So yeah, morale is only done by the human side.
That puts an interesting picture in the mind's eye. A zombie with an interesting hat.
Yeah, it's got like a helmet on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We've all seen the.
Sorry,
films.
I was thinking. I was. For some strange reason, I had a picture of some sort of zombie out of Shaun of the Dead wearing an Easter bonnet or something. Passing quickly on.
Yes, move us right on. So you make morale rolls for the humans. 5 or more to pass. If they fail, they rout. And then we'll come on to morale in a bit. If the enemy is still alive, the attacker must move away in its second movement phase. And you have to get at least 1 inch away. And you basically have to move your full movement away. If the enemy isn't still alive, then in your second movement phase, you can move freely wherever you want. So combat is quick, it's bloody, and then it separates out. So there's no combat going to over multiple turns. It just happens, and it's done with.
Yeah, they made it quite simple from that point of view.
Yeah, which is good because some close combat rules really go into far too much detail. So yeah, I mean they're quite clean.
Mm-hmm.
So then, I mean those are the basic sort of combat rules. Morale. It's basically if you fail a morale state, you rout. If you've got enemy within 3 inches of you when you rout, the unit is removed.
Okay.
Otherwise, when it's next activated, they move away from the and then keep moving away until the commanders remove the route marker or the unit moves off the table. If they move off the table, they can return as reinforcements.
Obviously.
Yeah, which is quite an interesting idea. I think there's a chance of units. I think if the units get into cover, they might have the chance to actually try and unroute themselves. But
Rally themselves, you mean?
Yeah. Sorry, to rally themselves. But I'm not sure. I can't remember that rule. If I'm being honest with you.
Okay.
So that's the basic rules.
Right.
You've then got advanced rules which cover things like barrages. Barrages basically you have barrage weapons. You put a barrage marker down where you want it to hit. I mean, these are not. Don't think of these as being big barrages coming in off table. These are things like on table weapons, which can just fire, maybe out of line of sight if they've got a targeter illuminating them. But it's a short range barrage. It's almost like a 2-inch mortar barrage as opposed to a 105, gun 2 miles in the rear. So it's taken the barrages pretty much always hit where they're aimed at because they've always got line of sight to see where they're aiming at. The more powerful the barrage, the bigger the template that you use, up to a 4-inch template. Anything bigger than that basically concentrates. So barrages spread out and give you more attack potential rather than being stronger at a smaller diameter.
Yeah.
And it's similar rules for how barrages work. Basically, anything that's under the barrage template will take a hit, and you do the combat as you would normally. There's rules obviously for heat rays because this is Martians. Martians have heat rays, so the heat ray can either shoot at a standard heavy heat ray would have a range of 30 with a +3 power, or it can do a sweep, which gives it a range of 15 inches, and that has a +2 power. But the sweep template is about 6 inches long. It's like a semicircle. and you basically have to place that template starting on the enemy unit that you're targeting, and then you can put the swoop template anywhere as long as it doesn't fall out of that 15-inch range.
Oh, right, okay.
And then any units which are underneath that template take a hit.
Ooh, that's quite nasty.
Have you not seen the film? We've then got rules for commanders. So each army will have a commander. The commanders will really, they have command points. So think of these as little tokens. And the bigger your army, the more tokens you get. And these can be used to do things like give a unit a double move at this, when it's activated. Or it can be used to remove a route counter from a unit. But you only get a certain number. You might only have 5 or 6 of these things for the whole game. So when you use these things, it's really important, because it's going to be quite often, if you're a human player, your units will be running off table. It's a case of, do you try and support them and hold them on, or do you just let them go? Mm-hmm. So these are some of the decisions that you have to make. There's rules for transports, so units can embark and disembark into a transport in each movement phase, which is quite interesting. So you could, if you've got a transport close, move your infantry into a transport. They can then move their distance. The troops can then get out and maybe go into close combat. And then if they succeed in that close combat, they can then move back into the trucks, or they can stay in the trucks and basically they can move out, they can fire, they can get back into the trucks, they can re-embark for the second turn.
Right. Okay.
So basically you can use trucks to basically ferry you around, do some combat, do some shooting, and then get the hell out of Dodge, shall we say. Yeah. Obviously if a transport unit is shot whilst it's got troops in it, then there's a chance that those troops inside can be killed. Otherwise the transport will be destroyed. You can combine transports from different units together to ferry one unit of infantry. So there's lots of leeway. It's fairly open and free flowing. It's not like a game like Drop Zone Commander where a transport will only pick up its own troops, which I always think is a bit weird. These are transports. They're there to pick up troops and move them places. Yeah. It doesn't matter if they're not their troops; they'll pick them up. Mm-hmm. You then got rules for hidden units. So you can start off with your troop, with your army hidden. Again, I think this is mostly a human trait.
Yeah.
So you get blip markers. Some blip markers will be dummies. Some blip markers can move. Others are stationary. So things like tanks, their blip markers don't move. But some troops will have a stealth ability which allows the blip markers to move. So they basically move in movement phase 2, and the Martian player basically has to either shoot them to see what they are, or get close enough that they basically turn over. And they might be a real unit, or it might be a dummy. But basically, the idea is to confuse the Martians and get them, chasing their tails. Yeah. There's rules for ambushes, where you basically pick a terrain item and decide that your unit will be based on that terrain item, and they can appear at any time in your activation anywhere in that terrain piece.
Oh, okay.
So
does that have to be written down before the game or something?
Yeah. So basically, you draw a little map and put an X where your big gun is. There's stealth, which I've covered. So units which have stealth means that their blip markers can move. You can set traps, which work in a similar way to ambushes. You've got the reserves, which can come on and sort of turn to 2 onwards. That includes any troops which have routed off, can then come back on the table, in a subsequent turn.
Okay.
And there's buildings and all sorts of stuff. So from a fairly basic, simple set of mechanics, you're then starting to have these layers of complexity added on top of it, which I do like. I like rules which are very simple mechanically but have a bit more depth about them. And there are some tactical choices in this game.
Yeah.
And I really like the way that they're using sort of hidden units, and it really is a case of keeping your troops off until you can move in. There's lots about combined arms in this game. It really is trying to use your big guns to damage the Martians, and then get your infantry in to basically assault them and take them out. You got troops like for the humans have got full on hope units which hide in infantry units, and basically their job is to attack Martians by chucking scaling ropes up and planting explosives on them, so they can make this sort of suicidal charge and try and take down the tripod. And that happens before a main assault happens, so you can try and damage the tripod, and then the rest of the infantry will then mop up. So,
yeah.
Again, we got Rough Riders, which we mentioned, these guys on Harleys, trying to try and take him down with big ropes. So there's lots of sort of nice little tweaks and things in there.
Yeah. So they're the basic rules and what have you. Now, you mentioned that the game is scenario driven, despite the fact that it's point systems, but it's driven by scenarios.
Yeah.
It isn't just a set up on either side of the table and go to it.
No, I mean obviously there is one scenario which does that.
Okay. So how many scenarios are there in the book?
There are 11.
Oh, that's not too bad. That's quite a decent selection. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean you've got 10 main scenarios. And then you've got scenario 0, which is the encounter. That is your standard lineup and charge scenario. Which I think every single rule system ever written has got that scenario in it. But the rest of them, they're quite interesting. Some are quite basic and allow you to choose whatever you want. Other scenarios have specific units that have to be involved, have to be included in the army, or specific terrain that has to be included. Some have very specific objectives that you need to do. So you need to swap and change your army around to handle each of the scenarios.
Right. So and victory conditions are scenario based. Yeah.
Yeah. So
right.
So each scenario has very specific victory conditions.
Not just destroy the opposition.
No, not at all. So I mean, like, let's choose one at random. Scenario 2, the bunkers. So basically, the defender sets up some bunkers across the table, and then basically defends that. The Martians' objective is to try and eliminate the human defences, and the humans are trying to stop them. You play until either side is broken. So broken means you've got all of your units are basically in a rout or under 50%, I believe. Let me just check that. Yeah, so an army's broken if half or more of its units have been destroyed at the end of the side's turn.
Right, okay.
And the victory conditions are really the Martians must clear the free field fortifications within 6 inches of the centre line to win the game. Only these field fortifications count for the purposes of winning the game. So, and the humans basically had to stop them from doing that and kill most of the Martians. So, I mean, there's lots of scenarios, and they're quite in-depth, they're quite interesting. And they sort of build on each other. You could almost play a little mini-campaign just using the scenarios. But there is no campaign system built into it, but,
I was about to ask, so as well as scenarios, is there a campaign system based?
No. They might do it in the future. I think there's talk a bit. That's that bit. Army lists. There's 3 army lists in the book. Obviously, this is concentrating on the North American theatre. So we got the U.S. Army, we got the Martians, and we got the BEF. The good old plucky Brits. Really in depth. They've really got the time. They've described every unit. You've got org charts for each nation, which give you an idea of how you could put your army together. All the stats, plus there's like special rules. So each army has sort of special rules, which again give it a little bit of difference. So they're not all the same, which is quite good. So I'm just going to flick over the page. So British Army, they've got special rules around radio command and control, so which improves the commander's radius for issuing orders and stuff. And they got battlefield initiative, so they're able to expend order markers to adjust the British initiative score. So, little things like that. So little tweaks for each particular army.
Yeah.
There's also painting guides in the rulebook, and most importantly to you, a index. So
Painting guides for every army?
Yeah. Well, for the Martians and for tanks.
Oh, okay.
You've also got sort of vignette pictures, and they got nice glossy pictures of all the units and ideas for camouflage and that sort of stuff.
Right.
So it's pretty good. I mean, it's 170 odd pages, lots of fluff in there, which just describe the whole conflict. Lots of pictures. It's very glossy. It's nicely laid out. I do find that the majority of the text maybe could have done with being a slightly bit bigger, maybe like 1 pixel bigger, shall we say?
Oh,
because if you're reading
1 point bigger, you mean?
1 point bigger, yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you're reading it without a decent light behind you, it can be a little bit hard to read. But that's me being really, really stern on it.
Is that because it's on a non-white background?
Yeah, it's on a sort of grey, sort of parchmenty sort of colour.
Right.
I mean, different sections of the rules are on different colour pages. Very subtle, though. I mean, it's a really nice put together book. I really like it. I've also got the small rules handbook, which you get with the basic set.
Yeah.
Which is the little A5 version. That's pretty much black and white throughout, so it's very grayscale. However, it's actually easier to read, funnily enough.
Right.
Probably because it's grayscale. But yeah, so you get that as well. So that's handy for taking away to club if you want something just to check the rules over.
Okay, yeah, we've gone through it all. I mean, as you've gone through, there's a couple of things which I kind of thought, that's interesting. Yeah. What are your initial thoughts having gone through all the rule? Have you had a chance to actually, play any little scenarios or anything yet, or this is just going off obviously from what we know and what we know of rules mechanics and the way these things normally work?
Yeah, I haven't played any of it yet. I got it last Friday, and with work and the fact I've been busy painting tripods, I've read through them a few times.
Yeah,
I mean, things I like about that, they're really comprehensive. I think they're going to give a good game. I think they'll give a good, fun game. We know the sort of rules that Rick and Alessio put together.
Yeah.
But they're not. I mean, let's be honest. They don't write rules which are simulations. These are not full-on tactical rules, but they do write rules which are very popular and let's be honest, they're a lot of fun to play.
Yeah.
And it sort of fits the dynamic of this game. But this game is written. It's written with a real nod and a wink to, the literature of sort of H.G. Wells, Jules Verne, and all that sort of stuff. But it really nods back to films of the 50s and 60s, the sci-fi films of that period.
Right. Okay.
It's got lots of that in it, so it's not tongue in cheek, but it's not. It doesn't take itself seriously.
Right.
It's a game. Okay, I might look at it and think, yeah, but I think it'll be a fun game. I think it'll be a game that you'll just sit there going dack with your tripods.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, there's a couple of things that come out. Okay, a couple of my initial thoughts. I mean, I must admit, I think as I said at the time, despite the fact that we've changed the dice, we still got the same old roll to hit, roll to wound, armor save, which several games, or several sets of rules these days are trying to steer more away from. They're trying to steer more to either a 1 or a 2 dice roll instead of a 3 dice roll. sort of system. I mean, I know it's in some ways it's kind of tried and tested and this, that, and the other. So, lots of people are familiar with it. Would have been nice to have something perhaps a little bit more streamlined, but there you go.
I think you need to look at the market this is aimed at.
Well, quite, yeah.
I think they're going to do well with this game because it's a game that straddles historical and sci-fi. So I think it's aimed at people who play games like Flames of War and play games like 40k, and there's a chance to basically those two divergent cultures are basically play one game.
Yeah.
It does cover that. It covers those two genres, which is quite interesting. The rules are simplistic, which again I don't think is always a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's enough depth in the rules, I think, with these extra, sort of the hidden markers and the command points, and it's a game that you need to use combined arms, and you need to think about how best to play your army. Because if you just go and charge at a bunch of Martians across open ground, you're going to get mullered. So you need to at least think about where the terrain is and how you move from terrain and how you protect your army until it can make that decisive attack. And you need to take the Martians out piecemeal. You need to concentrate on one tripod, take it down, move on to the next. But whilst you're doing that, the Martians are going to be moving all over you.
Again, an interesting thought. You're saying, if you're left out in the open, you are going to get killed. You look that in with what they've done with the move, fire, move, sort of thing, because if you're operating within the restrictions of an I go you go system, that's the only way you're going to be in a situation where you don't leave things out in the open.
Yeah.
Seems a little artificial to me.
Yeah. I
can see exactly why they've done it, but it almost seems like, well, okay, you can have an argument raging all over the place about how what is the best way to run your turn sequence or this, that, and the other. But it does seem a little bit that, okay, they thought, well, if we have an I go you go system and we do move and shoot, anything that moves out in the open and shoots, from a human point of view, is dead next turn, so we need to fix that.
Yeah.
And so they've used game mechanics. Well, I suppose it's all kind of artificial, really, at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah.
But they've used a particular style of game mechanic to get round a problem.
Yeah. I mean,
and well, you can tell from my tone of voice, I'm not 100% convinced by the fact of them turning around and doing it that way. It seems to me that they've approached the game from the wrong angle. But as you say, it's aimed at a particular market who are familiar with a particular way of playing games.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I do have some reservations on the turn sequence. I don't mind the combat system. I don't mind the move system. It's just the turn sequence. I actually quite like the command system as well. I wonder if it would have been better to have something a bit different with the way that units are activated. Maybe alternative activation where you activate one unit, you do a move, you do a fire, you do another move with that unit, and then as your opponent does the same.
Yeah.
Or something like that. I don't know if that would work better. But, I haven't played them, so I can't turn around and say I don't like them. I think we have to. I mean, I'm definitely going to play them as they're written a good 3 or 4 times, and then I'll make the decision on whether I want to change it. But I think from reading through the rules, that will probably be the only thing that I would change. But you need to work out how things play and how things can support each other to see whether that is whether that would break the game or not. So
yeah,
I think we have to put trust into the rules designers and let them. They've come up with this mechanic. We have to at least try it.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Yeah. Even though I've never really liked I go you go system. I always think they're a bit flawed, but you have to try it. I'm also not sure about the army lists. I think they could have done something with them. I kind of get where they're coming from. They're trying to sort of say, well, the human forces, they're ragtag. They've been on the defence, so almost like the army makeup is starting to break down. So you end up with these hodgepodge units of troops thrown together to defend a piece of ground. And maybe the Martians, they turn around and say, well, there's no real army composition, it's just whoever's there. I don't know, I just wonder whether they could have done something around that. But they have given us some sort of orders of battle that you can use, and I'll probably base my armies on those. They have said on the forums that for tournament play, they will probably put in some rules to limit the type of armies that people can play, or put.
So they're intending on playing tournaments with this then?
Oh God, yeah! Come on, this is right for a tournament game. This is a game you're going to play in about an hour and a half, so it's perfect for that sort of competitive play. And let's be honest, that's what the kids like. The kids do like their tournaments, so they will do something with that.
Right. Okay.
Whether they could have put it into the main rules, I'm not sure. But getting back to what's positive, I really like the history. I like the fluff that they've come together. The fluff that they put together.
Yeah.
It's plausible. It kind of makes sense. I mean, even down to having steam-powered tanks. That's been described because in that period, America ran on railways. There wasn't many huge interstate roads going across the country. And
yes, it was all coal-powered, wasn't it?
It was all coal-powered, and the big manufacturing they had was the railways. So it made sense to build steam-powered tanks because they had they had the know-how and they had the manufacturing to do it. And also there was a little quote saying that they didn't really want to put petrol-driven vehicles anywhere near a large heat ray.
Well, quite.
Which again, you sort of think, yeah, kind of get that. So they've thought about it, and they've dropped in lots of little sort of homages to our history, shall we say? So you've got Patton as a young man, in charge of a bunch of tanks. Roosevelt's in there as the as the president, and all that sort of stuff. So the history is quite fun, and like I say, it's definitely an homage to the 1950s films. And you can see where the game is going for that. The rulebook's really high quality. It's really well designed. Everything's in logical order. The rules are well explained, And putting aside the fact that if it's slightly dark, I can't read them very well. Put that aside. It's a really good rulebook. It's well worth picking up.
Yeah.
The armies are fairly balanced, I think. Every army's got pros and cons, and it will suit different styles of play.
The Meeples and Miniatures podcast is very happy to be sponsored by Coat d'Arms Paints. Now, Coat d'Arms have been supporting miniatures painters with their products for well over 20 years in some way, shape or form. Their current range is 150 sets of acrylic paint, which are available both as individual colours, but also in paint sets depending on period. Things such as the Ancients paint set, the World War II German, World War II American, World War II Russian paint sets, and they also include things like an ACW set and even a Horsetown set. That's one way to purchase your paints. And they also do triads. Now, if you're a fan of the 3-colour system made famous by the likes of people like Kevin Dallimore, you may like to purchase your paints with a dark shade, a medium shade and a highlight. And the triad system from Coat d'Arms allows you to do this. They also have ranges of textured paints called Brushscape, which allow you to paint from textures onto bases as well as colour. And these are ideal especially for smaller scale models. And if you're a fan of the dip method of painting, then Coat d'Arms have their own product available called Super Shader. This is available in light brown, dark brown and black. Coat d'Arms Paints have a whole range of products available to try. Check them out at www.blackhat.co.uk and be sure to tell them that we sent you.
The miniatures we haven't actually spoken about.
I'm going to say we haven't because again, probably one of the main points because up until now you kind of think, okay, well, this is it seems to be a fairly standard game. They could have almost produced this without a Kickstarter.
The game, yeah. I think the miniature range, because of the size of the miniature range, and the fact that they're doing pretty much the entire first 3 ranges straight away.
Yeah,
I don't think they could have done that without a Kickstarter. That would have, there was a lot of investment,
and plus the fact it's all in plastic.
Well, it's not.
Well, the majority of it's plastic, isn't it?
Well, yeah. They produced plastic tripods, so the Assault and the Scout tripods are plastic.
Right.
The other tripods, I think, are going to be a mixture of plastic and resin, or resin and metal. But basically, they produced 3 or 4 sprues that I've seen. So you've got the leg sprue for the tripods, which is the same for the Assault and the Scout one. So it's a fairly generic set of legs.
Yeah.
You've then got a whole section for the Assault tripods, a whole section for the Scout tripods, and the tank frame. The tank frame allows you to build at least 2 versions of tanks, the Mark II and the Mark III, and it's also the base for a lot of the other tanks. So things like the clamp tanks, the tenders, the munition tanks, all of these ones, the tows for the artillery, they're all based off this main body of the Mark II and Mark III tank.
Right. Okay. So it's effectively having a plastic chassis with. Then you can have metal add-ons and bits and pieces. Yeah. Yeah,
metal and resin, which is a good way of doing it. Some of the detail on the plastic is a little soft. If I'm being honest with you, you see where the Martian tripod has like an arm which holds the heat ray. Mm-hmm. Some of the claws on that is a little soft in detail, but it paints up nicely. That's a really minor criticism because they produce fairly decent plastics. They go together a treat. I built a tripod in about 10 minutes start to finish. So they all go together well. What you tend to get with the leg sprue is you get 2 static legs and then 1 leg which is split into separate joints, so you can maneuver that 1 leg into to show it sort of moving or something like that. So yeah, you got a little bit of movement there.
So the softness in the detail, is that simply down to the sorts of plastic they've used, or do you think there's something else?
I don't know. It's not as detailed as something you see from Renedra.
Right.
It's a little soft, so maybe it's the plastic that they use. Maybe it's just the way the molds have been cut.
Right.
But I don't want to sort of turn around and say that they're rubbish, because they're not. They're really nice kits. They go together really well. It's just it's just me being hypercritical.
Yeah.
Because we have seen some really decent plastics coming out recently, and these are ones that it's just a tiny bit soft. But
this is, as I say, it's like the industry's moving, especially with the way plastics have gone in the last few years. Technology has moved on leaps and bounds, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just the way that it was designed, the cards on it, or whatever. It's just they're perfectly usable. I think they're great. I mean, the tripods are lovely.
Yeah. And apparently the minis are heroic 15mm.
Yeah, they're actually 18mm, I reckon. I measured them the other day. The metal minis are lovely, really, really They're really nicely cast. They're well sculpted, lots of detail, beautifully cast, loads of character in them. I mean, the human prey, which is a bunch of humans running away, they're great because you've got women, children, old men, hats flying off. It's really, really characterful figures.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really looking forward to painting those. The tokens I've got, the sort of plastic tokens, again, they're really good. The posters I've got a pile of posters. Do you want some posters? I got loads. They're lovely. So, there's a lot of good stuff around here.
Okay, so if you're not on the Kickstarter, or you weren't involved in the Kickstarter, what's currently around and available at the moment?
They've released a sort of starter set, which is about $100, so about £60.
Yeah.
In that you get 3 plastic assault tripods, 6 steam tanks, 6 steam tanks, 2 US infantry squads, which is 30 miniatures. All of the metals come with bases as well, which is quite nice.
Mm-hmm.
You get a squad of Rough Riders, a machine gun squad. You get the handbook, so you get the small A5 handbook, some dice, and the plastic templates. So that's £60, which is like the starter set.
Yeah.
A set of 3 assault tripods is $40, which is £23.
Uh-huh.
So, it's not unreasonable. I think it's fairly well priced. They've also got, I think you've got like tank units and stuff like that, but it's all based around that sort of basic set. So they're trying to do the basic set to get people into it, and then I think they're going to release the other stuff as it comes out.
Yeah.
Like I say, I've got more stuff that's been released, and I got more stuff coming, obviously.
Yeah, because the other thing is that they already have plans moving beyond simply the Martian War, haven't they?
Yeah, and I think this is a really good point to sort of to probably finish on, is they're definitely taking the long term view of this game. This is not a game that they're just going to release this wave and these figures and that's it. They're already talking about the second supplements, and I think the second rule book. The second rule book is, I believe, going to cover the armies of Europe. So you have Germany and France, a bit more in Europe, and a bit more in the US and Canada, and also the Venusians. So the men.
Oh, right, okay.
The men from Venus, or should that be the women from Venus? So they're coming in. So they've started fleshing out a bit more. So that this is not just going to be a human versus Martians conflict. They are talking about a galaxy at war. So they've obviously been in the Venusians is
or at least a solar system.
A solar system. Maybe it's a galaxy. Yeah, the solar system of war. So the Venusians
Doesn't sound quite as good though, does it?
It doesn't, does it?
No.
No. There's men from Mars and all that. So all that's coming in. They're going to move the conflicts across the world as well. So they're definitely taking a long-term view, which I really think is to be applauded. They've also announced on the forum that before Book 2 comes out, they're going to release a free PDF supplement, which is going to cover the Underdwellers, Warlocks.
Morlocks?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yes.
I see. It's one of these. It's one of these. Let's just take something else that H.G. Wells wrote and just throw it in there, shall we?
Why not?
Okay.
This is why I said it. It's not just a continuation of the War of the Worlds. It is. They're taking lots of genres and lots of books and lots of films and basically, trying to pull them into things. I think the Underdwellers is going to be sort of mostly metal and resin, so that there's no plastic, so they can do those quicker. But that's the rules and the background will be as a free PDF. And they're saying that they're going to do lots of these sort of free supplements. So the books will cover sort of very specific campaigns. but there'll be free supplements coming out with figure ranges to complement those as well, which again, is quite nice. So I mean, there's a lot going with this game.
Yeah, well, I think it's a case of reserving final judgment until we actually got a few games under our belts in one way, shape, or form. So it sounds like my long put off visit to Wales has got to come to an end sometime in the near future.
Well, you have to let me paint this stuff first.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's something that I'm obviously we're able to give kind of an introduction to the game here, and I think it's one of these things that we'll come back and revisit.
Yeah.
And say, okay, so these are our initial impressions. Okay, now we've got several games under our belt and seeing how everything works. What do we, now what do we think? So, but I mean, thanks for that, Mike. And as I say, when the Kickstarter was around, strange to say, I did take a look at it. And I was initially tempted. I think what put me off was the first time I saw one of their painted tripods, because the way they design the tripods, there is a way of painting them that they have this big bug eye in the middle of the main capsule. If you wanted that way, Mike has painted his tripod in such a way that doesn't appear.
Yeah, I didn't like it. I don't like it's like a big nipple on the front of it. It looks awful.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it just makes the thing just a little bit too cartoon-like for me.
Yeah.
And the luminous green grenade launcher that they put on the one. Yeah, they had this grenade launcher tripod, which I don't know. It just didn't. At that point, I kind of went, no, I think I'll step away from this one. I think it was just some of the things they'd done with it. Some look really good. Other bits kind of think, no. But it's. I think it's horses for courses. Each person's have their own stuff. This will really appeal to some people, possibly not to others.
I mean, the figures and the miniatures are quite nice. I don't, if you don't like the rules, then play with something else. I think it'll go really well. Like I said, I'm reserving judgment on the activation phase and the turn sequence, but I will try it out first.
And to be honest, the other thing is that I mean, if nothing else, especially with the fact that War of the Worlds is actually a fairly popular period. It's a very popular thing to play. Now I know. I mean, we've discussed this off air a couple of times about the way things look, and obviously our particular generation has been vastly influenced by Jeff Wayne and the artwork that came out of that iconic and brilliant LP. But so we've kind of been influenced in a particular way with the War of the Worlds. They haven't gone that direction. They've done, and in some ways that's potentially quite brave.
Yes.
Because obviously they're in our generation, so they're aware of what's gone before. So to actually go back and what we'll do, we're going to do something different. But also the fact is, because they've done it in plastic, they actually make them accessible. So that sort of thing, War of the Worlds is quite popular. Even if you're not interested in playing or quite the Martian Front, you've got easily accessible plastic tripods.
Yeah.
Which and there are 15mm forces available for for Victorian England or what have you, so you can go back and play the original invasion if you really wanted. Just obviously pick up the tripods and away you go. There are other things that you can think of as being positives from this Kickstarter, that it's actually made the genre more available. I mean, these things are available if you look around. I remember seeing some really nice looking games put on. I think I saw one at Partisan. Again, I mean, the tripods look like the old Jeff Wayne ones. I don't know who made them, and I think they were 20 mil. But I don't think they're on everybody's radar. Whereas this now puts the whole thing on people's radar, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I can see why they didn't go for the Jeff Wayne version of the tripod, because he would sue their asses off. Let's be honest.
Well, there is that. Well, yes, there is that. I mean, and or failing that, if they did it properly, the license would be astronomical.
Yeah. So they've gone for. I mean, they've taken stuff from the book. So they've got the Martians holding the heat rays, which was mentioned in the book. Which, when you first look at it, you think that's a bit odd. Why have they done that? Why isn't it on their head where it's meant to be? And then you read the book and oh, actually no.
Because I mean, even back to the was it 50s or 60s?
Oh, the 1950s book. No, the film.
The 1950s film.
It was an awful film.
It was an awful film, but that had the old heat ray on. Well, no, sorry, they became laser weapons, didn't they?
They were manta rays. They were floated manta rays, and they had this big appendage of sticking on the top of their head.
Yeah, but I mean, it's been a while. And I know whilst the Tom Cruise version has been heavily criticised by a lot of people. Actually, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I seem to think actually in that one the heat rays were kind of at least on the end of appendages, weren't they?
To be honest with you, I've never seen that film, so.
Oh, you've not seen that one? Oh, okay. I think it has its merits. People may disagree with me. I seem to think on that one that the heat rays are on appendages, as opposed to as I said, the now iconic Jeff Wayne tripod where it's a funnel that is part of the canopy. Interesting.
Yeah, I must admit, with the one that has the sort of gas canisters, I've just assembled one of those, and I couldn't bring myself, because if you haven't seen a picture of it, it's basically it's a tripod, and slung around its waist is what can only be described as one of those tubes that you hold tennis balls in.
I was about to say it looks like a tennis ball launch, doesn't it?
Yeah,
and especially since Wimbledon's on at the moment.
Yeah, and the Martian is posed with one of these gas. They're balls, they're green balls, and it's got one of these green balls in its claw, and it's just lobbing it. And I looked at it, I thought, I can't bring myself to do this. So what I've done a conversion. So I've taken. They got this black dust launcher, which looks like a large bazooka, and it's quite nice. So I've taken that and I put the tennis ball tube on top of that with the tennis balls in it. So it's more like a projectile weapon. And
you turned it into a paintball gun.
I've turned it into a paintball gun, and which looks a lot better than a Martian lobbing a tennis ball at people, with his flimsy little arms. Just because I just couldn't bring myself to do this. I just thought it looks awful. It's the one that I just out of the three of the assault tripods, it's the one that I think looks the silliest. So I thought I'm going to do it like a projectile weapon. And yeah, now you mention it, it does look. It looks an awful lot like a paintball gun. We'll post a picture of it.
Or it's one of those things like I know it's like it's like one of those ball launchers out of Takeshi's Castle or something.
That's the way. It still looks better than a bloke trying to lob a.
Yes, try to lob a big green tennis ball. Yes, yes.
But hey ho.
Right. Okay. So that's all quite on the Martian front. I think we've covered it fairly comprehensively.
Yeah. Only 1 year in the making.
Yes, only a year in the making, and hopefully this podcast, after you've listened to it, is slightly less rubbish than the one we recorded a year ago.
It couldn't be worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
But,
so,
I mean, my view is, if you see it in the shops, and you probably will do, it's worth having a little look at it. Especially the rulebook. The rulebook's lovely, so pick it up and have a little look.
Yeah. So I mean, it's worth pointing out the rule book is not in the starter set, is it? It's
No.
separate.
That's right. You get the rules handbook, which is the A5 version.
Excuse me. That almost seems to be one of the standard things these days with like box sets. You get like an A5 cut down version of the rules, which is just the rules and no fluff.
Yeah.
And I wonder where they got that from. Yes, but it seems to be a standard thing with a lot of these starter sets now. And then obviously you've got the main rule book. So it does sound very nice, and it sounds like, if nothing else, that's especially for people out there who are rules collectors. That might be something that's worth a look at, especially given all the fluff and everything that's involved in it.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. I think it's well worth trying. I'm glad that I did the Kickstarter. I've been very pleasantly surprised with the quality of the stuff that I've got.
Oh, that's positive, because I mean, there is nothing worse. Because I mean, especially a lot of the time on Kickstarters, you kind of, it's always a case of obviously you're pre-ordering, and unless you're dealing with a well-known company, and even then, there are no guarantees here that are about what you're ordering. So at least it is a case of you come back and gone, oh, actually, I'm really pleased with that, as opposed to getting it and going, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's been a few of those. So, yeah, I think it'll be huge. I think it'll really take off.
Mm.
It deserves to. Because they put a lot of work into it. So, here's hoping.
Thanks for joining me tonight to share all about your latest purchase. And apparently this doesn't count because you bought it last year.
Yes.
So this doesn't count at all to this thing of turning around and saying, I'm not going to buy anything else, because you bought it last year, so it doesn't really count.
It came out of my bank account a year ago, so it doesn't count.
Right. Okay. So that's why you're getting around that one. Fine.
Yeah.
Yes. Until, of course, you suddenly turn around and go, well, actually, I know I've got all this stuff, but, I mean, actually, joking aside, do you think I know it's difficult to say at this point. I'm assuming they're...
the answer's yes.
Are you going to be buying more stuff?
More than likely.
More than likely. Or is it... Because, I mean, again, it's one of these things of, decent investment. Oh, yeah, that's fine, complete, got everything I need for this game.
No, I haven't. I really want one of the super heavy Goliaths and...
Oh, that's that huge human thing, isn't it?
Yeah, which I thought...
It's like a half track, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about... it's called a Land Leviathan. I think it's called the Thunder Child 2. But basically, it's a ship on tracks. It's huge. It's
about a foot long or something.
It's about a foot long, yeah. And I looked at it. I actually thought I ordered it. I did have to go back and have a look at my fund pledge. Yeah, I thought I'd ordered it, but I hadn't. I'd ordered the big Martian one instead.
All right.
But I might get that just as a bit of fun, because you need one.
Yes, yes. It's a 15mm game, but you end up with a one big Martian tripod versus one land
Yeah,
with lots and lots of guns on it.
Or what I could do is Firestorm have got one. You remember the West Wind did this huge prototype German thing from the end of World War II, which never got produced.
Oh yeah.
They made a model of that. It's this giant tank with 16-inch guns on it. Well, Firestorm have got one of the models, which I think is broken, so they're selling it for about 40 quid.
All of a sudden, you have another use for it.
Yes. Or maybe not. Yeah.
Okay, Mike. Well, thanks a lot for joining me again, and thank you to everybody for listening. And as always, until next time, happy gaming, and we'll speak to you very soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. If you want to know more about Meeples and Miniatures, there are several things you can do. First of all, you can visit the website at www.meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. If you want to contact the show at all, you can email me at neil@meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. You can follow the show on Twitter. Simply look for M&M Podcast or click the follow us on Twitter button from the website. We also have a group on Facebook. That's the Meeples and Miniatures Podcast Fan Club. Again, follow the link from the website. And finally, if you want to help us to support the show, you can always donate to the podcast by clicking the PayPal button on the donate page, again found on the website. Once again, thank you for listening. I hope you've really enjoyed the show. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.